The chamber was enormous, built to hold representatives from 200 different species. Jake Morrison stood at the center of it all, feeling very small. The ceiling stretched up so high he could barely see it. Lights from 100 different worlds created shadows that moved across the polished floor. Around him, in a massive circle, sat the members of the Galactic Council. Jake wore his dress uniform, the dark blue fabric pressed and perfect. On his left stood Claire Bennett, her red hair pulled back tight. She was the best diplomat Earth had ever produced. On his right was Greg Sullivan, a military man with gray hair and steady eyes. They had been here for 3 years, fighting for humanity's freedom. The trial was over now. The council had made their decision. The speaker stood on a platform high above the floor. It was a creature from the Shalar Union, tall and thin with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Its voice came through translators built into the walls, speaking every language at once. "We have considered all evidence," the speaker said. "We have heard testimony from both sides. We have reviewed the events that brought humanity before this council." Jake kept his face neutral. He knew what was coming. He had known for months. 3 years ago, humanity defended their colony worlds against Krylith aggression. The Krylith attacked without warning, without mercy. Humanity responded with force. This much is not disputed. Claire shifted beside him. She had argued this point 1,000 times. The Krylith struck first. Humanity only defended themselves. But the council did not care about who started the fight. They only cared about how humanity finished it. The question before this council is not whether humanity had the right to defend themselves. The question is how they chose to do so. Jake remembered those battles. He had commanded the defense fleet at New Terra. The Krylith came with 30 warships. Jake had only 12. But he won. He won by doing things the Krylith did not expect, things that made the other council species uncomfortable. Humanity fought with a level of aggression unprecedented in modern galactic warfare. They pursued fleeing vessels and destroyed them completely. They showed no mercy to disabled ships. They used weapons banned by council accord for 3 centuries. Greg Sullivan's jaw tightened. Those banned weapons saved millions of human lives. The Krylith were killing colonists, burning settlements, targeting civilians. Jake used every tool he had to stop them. In 17 separate engagements, humanity demonstrated a capacity for violence that troubles this council deeply. Humanity is young. Humanity is aggressive. Humanity does not respect the conventions that govern civilized warfare. The speaker paused. The chamber fell silent. 200 species waited. Therefore, by unanimous vote with 3 abstentions, this council finds humanity guilty of excessive aggression and destabilizing conduct. The sentence is immediate and absolute isolation. Jake felt Claire stiffen beside him, but he did not move. He had prepared for this. All human worlds will be placed behind quantum barriers. No ships may enter or leave. No communications will be permitted. No trade, no contact, no interaction with galactic civilization. This isolation will last for 1,000 years, at which time the council will revisit the human question. 1,000 years. Longer than human recorded history. Long enough for everyone who remembered this day to die of old age. Long enough for humanity to be forgotten. Humanity will have 6 months to prepare. After that, the barriers activate and cannot be deactivated from inside. This is the will of the council. This is the law. The speaker sat down. Around the chamber, representatives from 200 worlds looked satisfied. The human problem was solved. The dangerous newcomers would be sealed away, isolated, removed from galactic affairs. Jake Morrison stepped forward. His footsteps echoed in the massive space. "We accept the council's verdict," he said. His voice was calm, steady. "We understand you have made your decision. We will not argue or beg for mercy we know we will not receive." Some of the council members looked surprised. They expected anger, protest, desperate pleas. "I want to thank the council for their clarity," Jake continued. "You have shown humanity exactly where we stand. You have shown us what galactic civilization thinks of us. You have given us a clear understanding of our place in your galaxy." Claire glanced at him, worried. This was not the speech they had planned. "We defended our people. We stopped an invasion. We saved millions of lives. And for this you seal us away like criminals. You punish us for refusing to die quietly." The chamber remained silent. 1,000 years is a long time, Jake said. Long enough for much to change. Long enough for humanity to consider who our friends are. Long enough to remember this moment, this day, this decision. He turned slowly. looking at each section of the council chamber. When you voted to isolate humanity, you made a choice. You decided we were too dangerous to exist among you. You decided our methods were too brutal, too violent, too uncivilized. You looked at how we fight to protect our families and you were disgusted. Jake's voice remained level, controlled. We will remember that. Every human alive today will remember. Our children will remember. Their children will remember. For 1,000 years we will remember the day the Galactic Council looked at humanity and decided we were not worthy of standing beside you. He saluted, a crisp military gesture. Thank you for teaching us this lesson. We will not forget it. Jake Morrison turned and walked toward the exit. Claire and Greg followed. Behind them, the council chamber erupted in whispered conversations, but none of it mattered now. The decision was made. Outside the chamber, away from the council's eyes, Claire grabbed Jake's arm. What was that? That was not what we agreed to say. Jake looked at her, his face tired. It does not matter what we say. They made up their minds months ago. Maybe years ago. This trial was just for show, to make them feel better about what they were going to do anyway. Greg nodded slowly. So what now? Now we go home, Jake said. We have 6 months to prepare. Prepare for what? Claire asked. For isolation, for 1,000 years of silence, for whatever comes after. They walked through the station's corridors toward their ship. Other species moved out of their way, giving them space. Some looked curious. Others looked relieved. A few looked almost sad. Captain Amy Rodriguez waited at the airlock of their vessel, the Defiant. She was young for a starship captain, only 32, with dark eyes and black hair cut short. When she saw Jake's face, she knew the answer. Guilty, she said. It was not a question. Guilty, Jake confirmed. 1,000 years of isolation, Amy nodded once. Earth Command sent new orders, encrypted, eyes only. Jake followed her onto the ship. In her private office, Amy handed him a data pad. Jake read the message twice, then looked up. Project Exodus, he said quietly. It starts immediately, Amy confirmed. We have 6 months. Jake thought about Earth, about the 73 colony worlds, about 5 billion humans who were about to be sealed away from the galaxy. Then we better not waste time, he said. The Defiant left Arcturus Prime that same day. Behind them, the Galactic Council celebrated their decision. They had solved the human problem. They had protected galactic civilization from dangerous newcomers. They believed the matter was settled. They were wrong. Earth moved like it had never moved before. Within days of Jake Morrison's return, every military base activated. Every shipyard started running 3 shifts without stopping. Every scientist received new assignments. The entire human civilization focused on a single goal: survive what was coming. Dr. Leon Hayes stood in Luna Station, staring at screens that showed data from 17,000 researchers. He was 45 years old with messy brown hair and glasses he refused to replace with surgery. His team was scattered across human space, working on the same impossible problem. We cannot break the barriers, he told his senior staff during their morning meeting. The Council's technology is centuries ahead of ours. The quantum barriers use principles we barely understand. A younger scientist named Kevin Price raised his hand. Then what are we supposed to do? Leon smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We are not trying to break the barriers. We are preparing for 1,000 years without the Council, without their trade, without their technology, without any help from anyone but ourselves. He pulled up a new display showing dozens of research projects. Energy generation independent of Council fuel cells, food production without imported nutrients, medical technology without alien pharmaceutical supplies, manufacturing using only resources we can mine ourselves. We need to become completely self-sufficient. The scientists stared at the list. It was overwhelming. We have 6 months, Leon said quietly. Then the barriers go up and we are on our own. Captain Amy Rodriguez walked through the naval shipyards orbiting Mars. The noise was incredible. Welding torches sparked. Heavy machinery moved massive sections of hull plating. Thousands of workers swarmed over half-finished ships. A woman in a commander's uniform approached. Her name was Beth Cooper, Chief of Naval Construction. We are working as fast as we can, Beth said, but 6 months is not enough time. We have 42 new ships under construction. Only 18 will be finished before the barriers activate. Amy looked at the incomplete vessels, their skeletal frames exposed to space. The Council will not give us more time. We work with what we have. Beth pulled up a holographic display showing ship designs. The new vessels are different from anything we built before. Heavier armor, weapons designed for close combat. We are building them for a war we hope never happens. Hope is not a strategy, Amy said. We prepare for the worst. She moved to another section of the shipyard where 40 massive ships sat in various stages of construction. They looked like cargo vessels, big and ungainly. What are those? Amy asked. Beth's expression changed. Generation ships. Built to look like haulers so the council does not ask questions. Each one can support 10,000 people indefinitely. They have everything needed to start new colonies. Why do we need generation ships if we are being sealed inside our current territory? Beth glanced around, then spoke quietly. Because some people in Earth Command think we might need to disappear. Really disappear? Get beyond the barriers before they activate. Go somewhere the council cannot find us. Amy said nothing, but she filed that information away. On the colony world of New Terra, Lisa Chen coordinated the largest evacuation in human history. She was a logistics specialist, good with numbers and planning. Now she faced an impossible task. 12 million humans lived on remote colonies that could not survive isolation. Those worlds depended on imported food, medicine, and equipment. Without council trade, they would die slowly. Lisa stood in a command center filled with monitors showing ship movements across human space. Every vessel was tracked, every cargo load recorded. The council watched everything, looking for signs that humanity was violating their rules. We need to move 12 million people in 6 months, her assistant Danny Walsh said. The council will notice. Then we hide the movement, Lisa replied. Normal merchant traffic. Mining ships returning to port. Luxury liners taking passengers on tours. Family visits. We make it look routine. She pulled up a schedule showing hundreds of ships moving through human space. Each ship takes a few hundred extra passengers. Not enough to be suspicious. We spread the evacuation across thousands of trips. The council sees normal traffic patterns. Danny studied the schedule. It might work. But if the council figures it out early, they could lock down all travel. Then we move fast and we move quiet, Lisa said. In orbit around Jupiter, work crews prepared something nobody was supposed to see. Hidden among the construction platforms and mining facilities, crews assembled weapon systems that looked like industrial equipment. Massive railguns disguised as asteroid processors, missile platforms hidden inside fuel depots. Project Exodus was not just about survival. It was about preparation. On Earth, President Nathan Pierce worked 18-hour days coordinating the global effort. He was 60 years old, white hair and a face lined with worry. Every day brought new problems, new challenges, new impossible decisions. His chief of staff, a man named Carl Johnson, brought the daily reports. Shipyard production is ahead of schedule. Dr. Hayes says his research teams are making progress. The evacuation is 20% complete. Nathan nodded, reading through the data. What about food production? We are building 40 new agricultural stations in the asteroid belt. They will use hydroponics and artificial light, independent of any imported nutrients. Medicine? 15 pharmaceutical facilities under construction. Dr. Hayes' team is reverse engineering every drug we currently import from council species. Nathan leaned back in his chair. We are doing the impossible. Building a completely independent civilization in 6 months. We do not have a choice, Carl said simply. 3 months before the barriers activated, Nathan Pierce addressed humanity. Every human alive watched. 5 billion people on Earth and the colonies stopped what they were doing and listened. Nathan appeared on screens across human space. He wore a simple suit, no decorations. Behind him, Earth hung in space, blue and beautiful. My fellow humans, he began. In 3 months, the Council's barriers will activate. We will be sealed away from galactic civilization for 1,000 years. Many of you are afraid. Many of you are angry. All of you have questions. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I cannot promise you that the next 1,000 years will be easy. I cannot promise that we will not face hardship. But I can promise you this, we will survive. We will endure. We will remember. Nathan's voice grew stronger. The Council looked at humanity and decided we were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous. They judged us for defending our families. They punished us for refusing to die quietly when the Krylith attacked. Around human space, people watched with growing intensity. 1,000 years is not forever. It is not the end of humanity's story. It is only a chapter, and when that chapter ends, when the barriers finally fall, the galaxy will see what humanity became during our isolation. He looked directly into the camera. Remember this day. Remember why the Council sealed us away. Remember which species voted against us. Remember their names, their faces, their words. Pass this memory to your children. Let them pass it to their children. Nathan's expression hardened. The Council wanted to remove humanity from their perfect galaxy. They wanted to forget about us, to pretend we never existed. We will give them their wish. For 1,000 years, the galaxy will not hear from humanity. But we will not forget. We will never forget. The broadcast ended. Across human space, people returned to work with new determination. The final days before the barriers activated were chaos. Ships raced to reach safe harbors. The last evacuees left doomed colonies. Supply convoys delivered final shipments of critical materials. Jake Morrison stood on Luna Station, watching Earth below. Beside him, Claire Bennett and Greg Sullivan waited silently. "It is done," Claire said quietly. "We moved everyone we could. Built everything we had time to build. Prepared as much as possible. Is it enough?" Greg asked. "We will find out," Jake replied. Deep in space, far from any inhabited system, 40-generation ships activated their engines. They carried 400,000 humans into the unknown, beyond where the barriers would reach. If the worst happened, if humanity inside the barriers died, these ships would carry humanity's future. The Council never knew they left. The barriers activated exactly on schedule. Invisible walls of quantum energy surrounded every human world, every human station, every human ship inside the boundary. No signals could pass through. No vessels could cross. Humanity was sealed away from the galaxy. Inside the barriers, 5 billion humans looked up at their skies and knew they were alone. Dr. Leon Hayes checked his systems one final time. Everything humanity needed to survive was now in place. Barely. Just barely. "We did it," Kevin Price said, exhausted. "No," Leon replied. "We started. The hard part comes next. For the galaxy, the human problem was solved. Humanity was gone, sealed away, silent. The Council recorded the decision in their histories and moved on to other matters. They did not think about humanity again for a very long time. But behind the barriers, in the dark and the silence, humanity worked. 50 years passed in silence. The galaxy moved forward without humanity. New trade agreements were signed. Diplomatic disputes were resolved. Technology advanced. Young species joined the Council. The human question became history, something mentioned briefly in records before moving on to more important matters. Then the Kryleth returned. They came from beyond the galactic rim, 3,000 warships moving in perfect coordination. The Kryleth swarm had grown stronger during their absence. Their weapons were more powerful, their tactics more refined, and they remembered that the Council did nothing when they first attacked human colonies. The first world to fall was Helios Prime, a prosperous planet of 2 billion souls. The Kryleth fleet arrived without warning. Orbital defenses opened fire, but the Kryleth ships moved through the defensive grid like it did not exist. Within 6 hours, Helios Prime went dark. Admiral Vex Torin commanded the Council's response fleet. He was Centaurian, a species known for tactical brilliance. His fleet numbered 200 warships, all equipped with the latest Council technology. He was confident of victory. The battle lasted 47 minutes. Vex watched from his flagship as the Kryleth tore through his formation. Every time his ships tried to maintain distance and use their superior range, the Kryleth closed faster than seemed possible. Every time his vessels concentrated fire, the Kryleth scattered and reformed. "All ships, maintain defensive formation," Vex ordered, but his captains were already dying. The Kryleth tactics were precise, brutal, and utterly effective. They did not follow the conventions of Council warfare. They did not respect the unwritten rules. They fought to destroy, not to force surrender. Vex's flagship shuddered as Kryleth weapons tore into its hull. Alarms screamed. His crew fought to save the ship, but it was hopeless. In his final moments, watching his command dissolve around him, Vex remembered something. A report from 50 years ago. A human commander who fought the Kryleth and won 17 straight battles. What was his name? Jake Morrison. The man the Council judged too violent, too aggressive. The man who knew how to fight the Kryleth. Vex's flagship exploded. 173 council ships died with him. 27 vessels escaped to bring word of the defeat. The council convened an emergency session. Representatives from 200 species gathered at Arcturus Prime, the same station where humanity had been judged decades before. Councillor Yaren of the Shalar Union stood to address the assembly. He was young, only in his third decade, but he held the same seat his ancestor occupied during the human trial. The Krylith represent an existential threat, Yaren said. They have already taken 6 systems. Our fleets cannot stop them. Every engagement ends in defeat. Around the chamber, representatives shifted uncomfortably. This was supposed to be impossible. The Council's military was the most powerful force in the galaxy. We must consider unconventional options, an elderly Draknir councillor said. Her name was Celis, and she had voted to isolate humanity 50 years ago. Now she looked desperate. What options? Another representative demanded. We have already committed half our fleet. What more can we do? Silence fell over the chamber. Nobody wanted to say what they were all thinking. Finally, Yaren spoke. There is one species in the galaxy with experience fighting the Krylith. One species that consistently defeated them in combat. No, a councillor from the Vortex Coalition said immediately. Absolutely not. Humanity is sealed away, Celis added. Even if we wanted their help, they are behind quantum barriers that cannot be lowered temporarily. Yaren pulled up a technical display. The barriers can be lowered. The process is complex and requires significant energy, but it is possible. We could open a communication channel. You want to beg the humans for help? The Vortex Counselor asked, his voice dripping with contempt. The same species we judge too dangerous to exist among us? I want to survive, Yaren replied quietly. The debate raged for hours. Some representatives argued that the Council could handle the Krylith without human assistance. Others pointed out that every day of delay meant more worlds lost. A few voices suggested that perhaps the Council had been wrong about humanity. Perhaps their violence was exactly what the situation required. The vote was scheduled for the next day. Representatives returned to their quarters to consider their positions. The future of galactic civilization hung in the balance. That night, Councillor Celis sat alone in her quarters reviewing old records. She pulled up footage from the human trial, watching Commander Jake Morrison give his final statement before leaving the council chamber. 1,000 years is a long time, Morrison had said. Long enough to remember this moment, this day, this decision. Celis shivered. At the time, those words seemed like empty defiance. Now they felt like a promise. The next morning, the council voted. The motion passed by a narrow margin. The council would request human assistance. They would offer favorable trade terms, limited territorial expansion, and formal recognition as a civilized species. The vote to isolate humanity had been unanimous. The vote to ask for help barely reached majority. The barriers required 3 days to open a communication channel. Council technicians worked around the clock, redirecting massive amounts of energy. Finally, the channel opened. A narrow beam of communication passed through the quantum walls into human space. The Council's message was carefully crafted by their best diplomats. It acknowledged the Krylith threat. It noted humanity's successful defense against similar aggression. It requested assistance, offering generous compensation. The message was sent. The channel remained open. The Council waited for humanity's response. Hours passed, then days. The communication channel stayed active, but no response came. Yaren checked the systems personally. The message was received. We have confirmation. The humans know we contacted them. Then why do they not answer? Celis asked. Yaren had no answer. A week later, with the Krylith advancing on 2 more systems, the Council sent a second message. This one was more direct, more desperate. They explained the severity of the situation. They acknowledged humanity's expertise. They asked politely but urgently for help. Again, silence. Some council members grew angry. How dare the humans ignore them? Others became worried. What if humanity could not respond? What if something terrible happened behind the barriers? A few representatives wondered if maybe humanity simply chose not to answer. The council sent 5 more messages over 3 weeks. Each one grew more desperate. They offered more territory, better trade terms, full membership in the council with voting rights. They promised to clear humanity's record. to admit their judgment had been too harsh. Every message received the same response. Nothing. Behind the barriers, in an orbital station high above Earth, Commander Jake Morrison read the latest council message. He was an old man now, 97 years old. Kept alive by advanced medical technology, humanity developed during their isolation. Beside him stood Captain Amy Rodriguez, her hair gray, but her eyes still sharp. On his other side, Dr. Leon Hayes leaned on a cane, his brilliant mind still working despite his failing body. "They are begging now," Amy observed, reading through the message, "offering us everything they denied us 50 years ago." Jake finished reading and looked at his old friends. "What do you think we should do?" Leon smiled. "I think we should discuss it thoroughly. Consider all angles." "Take our time," Amy nodded. "I agree. This is an important decision. We should not rush." They talked for exactly 7 minutes. Then Jake deleted the message. "No response?" Amy asked, knowing the answer. "No response," Jake confirmed. "They made their decision 50 years ago. They told us we were too dangerous to exist beside them. They sealed us away like criminals. Now they ask for help when they need us. And we give them the same mercy they gave us," Leon said quietly. Jake nodded. "Exactly the same." The Council's communication channel remained open for another month, broadcasting into human space. The Council sent daily messages. They pleaded. They offered more concessions. They explained that millions were dying. Humanity never answered. Eventually, the Council closed the channel. The energy required to maintain it was needed elsewhere. The Krylith continued their advance. Councillor Yareen stood before the Council Assembly one final time on the subject of human assistance. "They heard us," he said quietly. "Every message, every plea, and they chose to remain silent." Around the chamber, representatives sat in shocked silence. This was not supposed to happen. When the strong asked the weak for help, the weak were supposed to answer. "What do we do now?" Silas asked. Yaren looked at the empty space where humanity's representative once stood decades ago. "Now we learn to fight like the humans did. We learn to be brutal. We learn to be aggressive. We learn to do whatever is necessary to survive." The words tasted bitter in his mouth, but they were true. The Krylith War lasted 40 years. The Council learned to fight without mercy, without rules, without the conventions that once defined civilized warfare. They became what they once feared humanity was, and they hated every moment of it. The war ended in a negotiated peace. The Council survived, but they were diminished. Half their territory was lost. Billions had died. Their proud military was shattered. They won by becoming what they once judged humanity for being. 300 years had passed since the barriers activated. Everyone who attended the original Council trial was long dead. Jake Morrison was a name in history books. Amy Rodriguez was remembered as the founder of humanity's modern ESO fleet. Dr. Leon Hayes had universities named after him, but their work continued. The barriers had changed humanity in ways the Council never imagined. Cut off from galactic trade, humans were forced to innovate or die. Without access to Council technology, they developed their own solutions. Without alien resources, they learned to extract everything needed from asteroids, dead moons, and empty space. Commander Nicole Fletcher stood on the observation deck of the orbital shipyard above Earth. She was 38 years old, with short blonde hair and the confident stance of someone born to military life. Before her stretched the human fleet, vast beyond anything her ancestors could have imagined. A young lieutenant named Sam Brooks approached. "The inspection tour is ready, Commander. Admiral Rodriguez requested you show the senior staff what we have accomplished." Nicole nodded. Admiral Claire Rodriguez was the great-granddaughter of Amy Rodriguez. The family tradition of service ran deep. They took a shuttle through the shipyard, moving past vessel after vessel. The ships were massive, angular things covered in armor plating. They looked nothing like the sleek Council designs humanity once tried to copy. "These are our frontline warships," Nicole explained to Sam. "Designed for close combat where human reflexes and aggression provide advantages. Each one carries 3,000 crew and enough weapons to destroy a small moon." Sam stared at the nearest vessel. It bristled with railguns, missile pods, and energy weapons humanity developed independently.
"How many do we have?"
8,000 combat vessels. Another 12,000 support ships. 20,000 total. Sam's eyes widened. Before the barriers, we only had 800. Before the barriers, we relied on the Council for everything. Now we rely on ourselves. They continued the tour, moving to a research facility built into an asteroid. Dr. Helen Price, granddaughter of Kevin Price, led the scientific operations. She was a small woman with wild black hair and eyes that never stopped moving. Project Titan, Helen announced, gesturing to a massive complex of machinery. Our greatest achievement. Nicole studied the equipment. It looked dangerous, all exposed power conduits and unstable energy fields. We cracked faster than light communication in transit without Council technology, Helen explained. Our method is different. More violent. It requires massive energy and it is extremely dangerous. How dangerous? Sam asked. Helen's expression went flat. 10% of the technicians who operate it die. The energy fields are unstable. Sometimes they collapse wrong and the operator is caught in the feedback. We lose good people regularly. And you keep using it? Sam said, shocked. Because it works, Helen replied simply. The Council's FTL technology is smooth and safe and completely dependent on quantum principles we cannot replicate. Our method is crude and kills people and belongs to us alone. She pulled up a display showing test results. We can communicate across human space instantly. We can move ships faster than Council vessels. Yes, it is dangerous. Yes, we lose people. But it means humanity is not trapped by our isolation anymore. Nicole understood. The Council gave humanity a prison. Humanity turned it into a fortress and found their own way out. The next stop was New Terra, the colony world that Jake Morrison once defended. The shuttle descended through atmosphere to a city of 40 million humans. Every building, every street, every system was built with human hands and human minds. Lisa Chen's great-great-granddaughter, Susan Chen, ran the civilian administration. She was tall and thin with gray eyes and a sharp mind for logistics. Walk with me, Susan said, leading them through the city streets. Children played in parks beneath artificial suns that humanity designed and built. Adults worked in factories producing goods that once had to be imported. Stores sold food grown in orbital hydroponic stations. This city did not exist before the barriers, Susan explained. New Terra had maybe 2 million people then, all dependent on Council trade. Now we have 40 million and we produce everything we need. They entered a school where young children sat in classrooms. Sam noticed immediately what they were learning. History. Specifically, the history of the Council's judgment. Every human child learns about the trial as their first history lesson, Susan said quietly. They learn the names of the species who voted to isolate us. They learn why we were judged. They learn what the Council thought of humanity. A teacher stood at the front of the classroom, showing pictures of the Council chamber. The Council decided humanity was too violent, the teacher said to students who could not have been more than 8 years old. They looked at how we protected our families and they were disgusted. So they sealed us away for 1,000 years. A small girl raised her hand. Why did they do that? Because they were afraid, the teacher replied. Afraid of what humanity could become. And they were right to be afraid. Sam looked uncomfortable. You teach children to hate the Council? We teach children the truth, Susan corrected. We do not tell them to hate. We tell them to remember. There is a difference. They left the school and continued through the city. Everywhere Sam looked, he saw evidence of humanity's growth. Manufacturing centers, research facilities, training grounds for military personnel. Everything needed to sustain a civilization without outside help. We are not the same species the Council judged 300 years ago, Susan said as they reached a memorial park. Isolation changed us, made us harder, made us stronger, made us independent. The memorial park contained a statue of Jake Morrison, forever frozen in his dress uniform. Beneath the statue, his final words to the Council were carved in stone. 1,000 years is a long time, long enough to remember this moment, this day, this decision. Sam read the words and felt a chill. They were not a plea, they were a promise. Back in orbit, Nicole brought the inspection tour to its final destination. A classified facility hidden among the shipyards, access restricted to senior leadership only. Admiral Claire Rodriguez waited there, along with 3 other admirals and several civilian officials. Claire was 50 years old, with her great-grandmother Amy's dark eyes and the same air of quiet competence. Show them, Claire said simply. Nicole activated a holographic display. It showed the galaxy beyond the barriers, the Council's territory mapped in detail. For 300 years, we have monitored the galaxy using sensors placed in deep space before isolation, Nicole began. We watched the Krylith War. We saw the Council refuse our existence. We observed their expansion and contraction. She zoomed in on specific systems. And for the last 100 years, we have been preparing for the day the barriers fall. New markers appeared on the display. Hundreds of them scattered throughout Council space. These are weapon platforms, Nicole continued, placed in deep space over the last century using our new FTL technology. Each one is equipped with weapons that could devastate a planet. They are hidden, dormant, waiting. Sam stared at the display in shock. How did we place them without the Council noticing? Because the Council thinks we are still trapped behind the barriers, Claire said. They stopped watching human space centuries ago. They forgot about us. She stood and walked to the display, touching different markers. When the barriers fall in 700 years, humanity will not emerge weak and isolated. We will emerge surrounded by weapons positioned throughout Council territory. We will have ships more numerous than theirs. We will have technology they do not expect. You are planning for war, Sam said quietly. We are planning to never be judged again, Claire corrected. The Council sealed us away because they thought we were too dangerous. When the barriers fall, we will show them exactly how dangerous humanity can be. Nicole pulled up another display, this one showing population numbers. Humanity now numbers 40 billion souls, 300 colony worlds, 80,000 warships, industrial capacity that exceeds what the Council had when they judged us. And 700 years still remain before the barriers fall. Sam did the math in his head. If humanity continued growing at this rate by the time the barriers fell, they would be the largest single civilization in the galaxy. What happens when the barriers fall? He asked. Claire's expression hardened. That depends on the Council. If they welcome us as equals, perhaps we can coexist. If they try to judge us again, try to control us, try to contain us, then they will learn what 300 years of isolation created. She pulled up one final image. It was a recording from the original trial, showing Jake Morrison standing before the Council. Our ancestors stood in that chamber and accepted the Council's judgment. They did not beg. They did not plead. They promised to remember. And we have kept that promise. Claire turned to face Sam directly. Every human alive knows what the Council did. Every child learns the history. Every soldier trains knowing that someday the barriers will fall, and humanity will have to face the galaxy again. We are not preparing for war. We are preparing to never be vulnerable again. The recording played Morrison's final words. Thank you for teaching us this lesson. We will not forget it. Claire froze the image. That was not sarcasm. It was literal truth. 1,000 years passed in silence and darkness. The galaxy moved forward. New civilizations rose. Old powers faded. Technology advanced. The Council governed 200 species across thousands of systems. They recorded their histories, celebrated their achievements, and occasionally mentioned humanity as a footnote. The violent species sealed away for their own good. The barriers were scheduled to fall on the exact date they activated, 1,000 years later to the day. Most Council species had forgotten humanity existed. A few historians studied human history as an interesting case study. Nobody prepared for what would emerge. The barriers fell at midnight Galactic Standard Time. Captain Danny Wright stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the quantum walls dissolve. He was 42 years old, born and raised in a humanity that never knew the Council. His parents told him stories about the trial. His teachers showed him recordings of Commander Morrison's final words. His entire life was preparation for this moment. Barriers down, his sensor officer reported. We have clear space ahead. Danny took a breath. All ships advance through the barrier threshold. The Retribution moved forward, a massive Dreadnought-class warship crewed by 2,000 personnel. Its weapons could crack a planet's crust. Its armor could withstand sustained bombardment. It was designed for one purpose, to ensure humanity never faced judgment again. Behind the Retribution, 300 identical ships followed in perfect formation. Behind them, another 70,000 warships waited in reserve. The galaxy was about to meet the new humanity. Admiral Sophie Grant watched from her flagship, the Remembrance, positioned above Arcturus Prime, the same station where humanity was judged 1,000 years ago. She was 55 years old, with sharp blue eyes and gray hair cut military short. She was the best the human fleet had ever produced. "Status report," Sophie ordered. Her communications officer, a woman named Kate Phillips, checked her displays. "All fleet groups reporting ready. Weapon platforms activating throughout Council space. Ground forces standing by. We have complete operational readiness," Sophie nodded. Everything humanity built for 1,000 years had led to this moment. "Contact Arcturus Prime. Request a meeting with the Council." Kate hesitated. "Request, Admiral?" "For now," Sophie replied. "Let us see how they respond before we stop being polite." The message went out. Within an hour, the Council's response came back. They agreed to meet. They sounded confused but curious. After all, humanity had been silent for 1,000 years. The Council probably expected grateful, humble humans seeking to rejoin galactic civilization. They were about to be disappointed. Sophie took a small shuttle down to Arcturus Prime, accompanied by 6 guards in full combat armor. The Council probably thought it was excessive. Sophie thought it was symbolic. The Council chamber looked exactly the same as it did in recordings from 1,000 years ago. The same massive space, the same raised platforms for Council representatives, the same spot on the floor where humans once stood to be judged. Sophie walked to that exact spot and waited. The Council members filed in slowly. There were still 200 species represented, though the specific individuals were different. They looked at Sophie with curiosity and slight condescension. She was human after all. The species once judged too violent to exist among them. Counselor Yaren IV took the speaker's platform. He was the direct descendant of the Yaren who once tried to contact humanity during the Krylith War. His family passed down the story of humanity's silence as a cautionary tale. "Welcome back to the Council." "Humanity," Yaren said formally. 1,000 years have passed since your isolation began. The Council hopes this time has allowed your species to grow and mature. We are prepared to discuss your reintegration into galactic society." Sophie said nothing. She simply pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic display filled the chamber. It showed the current disposition of human forces. 80,000 warships, 400 colony fleets, weapon platforms surrounding every major Council world. The chamber fell silent. "I am Admiral Sophie Grant of the human fleet," Sophie said clearly. "I am not here to request reintegration. I am here to deliver terms." Yaren looked confused. "Terms?" "The species who voted to isolate humanity 1,000 years ago will cede 50 systems to human control, immediately, unconditionally. This is not negotiable." The chamber erupted. Council representatives shouted in multiple languages. Some expressed outrage, others disbelief. A few looked genuinely frightened. Yaren raised his hands for silence. It took several minutes to restore order. "You cannot be serious," Yaren said. "You are demanding that multiple Council species abandon their worlds? Based on a judgment made 1,000 years ago?" "Yes," Sophie replied simply. An elderly counselor from the Vortex Coalition stood. His name was Drex VII, and his species had voted to isolate humanity. "You have no right to make demands. The Council governs this galaxy. We make the rules." Sophie smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "You made that very clear 1,000 years ago. The strong decide the fate of the weak. The majority votes and the minority submits. You taught humanity those rules." She expanded the holographic display showing detailed scans of Council military forces. "Your fleet numbers 75,000 warships. Ours numbers 80,000. Your weapons technology has advanced over the past millennium. So has ours. Your industrial capacity is significant. Ours is greater." The numbers told a clear story. Humanity was no longer the weak species that stood trial. They were a military power equal to the entire Council. "This is madness," another counselor said. "You spent 1,000 years preparing for war? We spent 1,000 years preparing to never be judged again," Sophie corrected. "Whether it becomes a war depends entirely on you." Counselor Celis V stood. She was ancient, kept alive by medical technology, and her species had also voted to isolate humanity. "Are you truly willing to fight 200 species over ancient grievances?" Sophie did not answer with words. She activated another display. It showed the weapon platforms hidden throughout Council space. Hundreds of them, each one powerful enough to devastate a planet. Each one positioned near major population centers. "These platforms have been in place for 800 years, Sophie said. "While you forgot about humanity, while you stopped watching our space, while you assumed we were trapped and helpless. We were working. The Council stared at the display in growing horror. Every major world in Council space has at least 2 of these platforms in nearby deep space. They are fully automated. They respond to commands from human fleet headquarters. They can be activated remotely. Sophie let that information sink in. So no, Counselor Celis, I am not asking if humanity is willing to fight 200 species. I am informing you that humanity is already positioned to destroy 200 species. Whether we do so depends on your next decision. Yaren looked shaken. What you are describing is terrorism. Hostage-taking on a galactic scale. I'm describing insurance, Sophie replied. The Council proved 1,000 years ago that galactic law means nothing. That justice is whatever the majority votes it to be, that the strong dictate terms to the weak. She walked slowly around the chamber floor, looking up at each section of Council representatives. You sealed humanity away because you feared our violence, because we fought too aggressively to defend our people, because we did not follow your rules for civilized warfare. Her voice grew harder. 1,000 years is a long time, long enough for humanity to consider what the Council taught us. And we learned the lesson perfectly. Power matters. Strength matters. Everything else is just words. Sophie stopped and faced the speaker's platform directly. 50 systems, 50 Council worlds transferred to human control. The species who voted to isolate us will move their populations out peacefully. Human forces will escort them to ensure compliance. This will begin immediately. And if we refuse, Drex demanded. Sophie's expression went cold. Then you will learn what 1,000 years of isolation created. You will learn what happens when you take a violent species and give them a millennium to perfect their violence. You will learn that humanity does not forgive. We do not forget, and we always keep our promises. She pulled up the final display. It was a recording from the original trial showing Commander Jake Morrison giving his final statement. 1,000 years is a long time. Morrison's voice echoed through the chamber. Long enough to remember this moment, this day, this decision. Sophie froze the image on Morrison's face. He stood where I stand now. He accepted your judgment. He walked out of this chamber knowing humanity would be sealed away for 1,000 years. And he promised you would remember. She turned to face the Council directly. This is that remembrance. This is humanity keeping the promise Morrison made. You asked for humanity's last breath before you sealed us away. You wanted us to beg, to plead for mercy we would never receive. He gave you something better. Sophie's voice filled the massive chamber. He gave you a promise that humanity would return, that we would remember, that 1,000 years is not forever. It is simply long enough to prepare. The Council sat in stunned silence. You have 24 hours to decide, Sophie said. Accept our terms and transfer the 50 systems peacefully, or refuse and face the consequences.